Okay, let's do it. Hey, so I'm here with Matthew Ricker, and we wanted to just do a quick chat today. We'll probably do a couple of these because I think this is going to run a little bit long because you've been working on this case forever, basically. So lots of questions, lots of interesting things to cover. So for people who don't know who Matthew Ricker is, do you want to just give us a little few details about yourself?
Sure. I started many years ago in the late 1990s, mid to late 1990s. I wrote a little bit about the death of Kurt Cobain. I do not come from the perspective of a fan. I should add that. I actually was interested in a story. I've actually never been a fan of Nirvana's music. I'm actually not a big music fan at all, and I'm actually not even an alternative music fan. I get a lot of these inquiries about, things like this. People ask me about different bands and things like that. I don't know anything about stuff like that. So I was actually found the story fascinating. That was that's what drew me to it originally. So I started writing about it, and then I dropped it for many years. And back in like the late 90s or mid, I was, just out of college, and I don't know, I'd spoken to a few people who were involved in the case. Spoke to Tom Grant maybe once or twice, but nothing terribly meaningful. And and then years later, I think in 2011, out of the blue, I hadn't written about it for years. And Tom contacted me and asked me if I wanted to work with him to write a book. Came right out of the blue. Not sure why that happened, but it did. He asked me to, and I was interested because I had followed the case on and off, more off than on, but I thought it had never been done very well. And I thought it needed a good treatment. I had gone to I'm not sure the year, but I had gone to the press conference in Manhattan for Love and Death. And
Mhm.
I thought, boy, that didn't go very well. And and I just thought, well, this really could use a good treatment, this story, and I would love the chance to be able to do it. And I felt like no one had, and it was in the back of my mind. And then Tom reached out to me and asked me to help him write a book, and so I agreed to do that. For a long time, it was just kind of mostly talk, but let's see. I think Tom and I were just talking, and then in 2012, Tom Grant and I met in person. It could have been 2011. It was October, maybe of 2011. I think we first met in person in Seattle. Um, Tom had flown up there for the Lifetime channel, and they flew him up there. They put him up, and Tom said, I'm going to go to the crime scene, and I'm going to do a story for this network, and why don't you come? So last minute I booked a flight and a hotel, and I flew out to Seattle, and I went out there for a few days, and I met up with Tom, met up with Lane Staley's mother as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, the three of us had dinner one night actually, and then I went to the crime scene with Tom. It was interesting enough. I really didn't have to go, but I did go, and we I didn't learn that much. It is kind of helpful to go to the crime scene, but it's not terribly essential. And the Lifetime interview wasn't very good. And and after that, we just started talking for a while, and then we met up again in California in 2012, I believe. And yes, and we met up in Southern California, and we had a meeting in Goleta at an apartment complex where his daughter was the manager, and she arranged for us to have a meeting room. We had some meetings there, and at that meeting, I had an idea, rough idea for the book that I was how I wanted the story to be told, the frame, the narrative, and Tom sprung this idea on me of doing 3 books. We're going to do 3. And I just said, and we're going to self-publish them. And I just thought, why? Like success in any endeavor has to have a model. You have to model it on something if you can. And there were a few models out there of books that had achieved something. And so, and I just thought, no one's ever done anything like this before. Why would this work? His original concern that he expressed to me, his original motivation, he claimed was a film that Courtney Love was going to make about the death of Kurt Cobain. He wanted to prevent that by writing this book. I couldn't find much evidence that she actually aspired to make such a film, and that film never really materialized.
Right.
So, but he believed it. And he believed this 3-book self-published series, which he wanted to call Murder Lake, Washington, would accomplish that. And I thought that that was delusional. And I just thought, okay, he's an eccentric guy. Maybe he's not the smartest guy. I thought, though, he was well-intentioned at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, I don't know. He said, I'm gonna write much of this book. Help me. And I said, and if you help me go along with this, then you can write the book that you really want, and I'll give you complete control over this book. You can do it. It'll be your book. You have my word. It'll be yours. You can do it. However you want to do it, you can have total control over it. Write the book you want if you help me do this 3-book series. And I unfortunately believed him. And so I said, okay, I'll go along with this. I'll have you write these 3 books. Now here's the part that no one, I always called the early efforts to bring attention to the Cobain case. I used to refer to them as the Vaudeville Act. And if you've ever seen the old skits in vaudeville, where the tramp will go out on the stage and then toss banana peels in front of himself and then proceed to trip over them. And that's what it was like.
Okay.
I saw all these other things that were happening. Like Tom had this thing called the Project Unplugged, where they went around and like he had someone from Maine come out, from some guy come out and fly out and help him and film these random scenes around in Seattle. And it just was like this, time wasting nothing burger.
Who
And
was
I just thought,
funding that at the time? Who was
I don't
paying for
know.
that? Oh, okay.
I have no idea. And so I just thought, okay, this is just another vaudeville act. Like, okay, fine, do your 3 books, call them Murder Lake, Washington, do some of the writing yourself. Tom's not a writer. And
You don't
I did
say.
he's not. He thinks he is. He's not.
Yeah.
And so so I said, okay, fine. And now during this time, I should add, I had when Tom was asking me to do this, and I showed him this because I introduced him to I had a sister-in-law who was going to school at UC Santa Barbara at that time, and so my wife and the kids drove down from the Bay Area and met up with Tom. I met up with Tom, and then the kids went off and met up with their sister-in-law and my wife. But I showed him my daughter at that time, and I had told him about this. And my daughter was born with a birth defect called craniosynostosis, and it was very, very, very time-consuming. And that is when the suture in the skull closes prematurely in the womb. So the skull will be misshapen when the child is born.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of work to deal with something like that. Very stressful. Now, and we had actually multiple major surgeries. I say this with great shame, actually, but at this time that we had to go through. And I told him this, showed him my daughter, pointed out what we were going to do. This is the misshape on our skull. We have to deal with this. And basically the child's skull has to be removed and then from the head and then reshapen and then reattached. It's very involved. And it worked out successfully, but it was a long road for us. And during this time that I was going through all this, Tom asked me to do this Murder Lake, Washington thing, right? And to my shame, I agreed to help him. I had no time for any of this at all.
Yeah.
So I elicited this promise from him. Okay, I have no time to do this. This is like, but if I go through with this and help you, I will write the book eventually that I want to write, and I will have total control over it, especially the word choice,
Hmm.
um, everything from start to finish, all of it, how it's framed, the argument, all of it. I said, I know how it should be done, and I want it done right. Yes, 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 my word, my word. And we talked about this. Tom does this thing. Um, this term I use, and I don't mean to be crude when I use it, but he uses this term. He exhibits this behavior, and I call it masturbatory moralism. And
Mm.
he talks about his honesty and things like that. And it'll be like he'll like this extraordinary like self-congratulation. Like he almost gets aroused when he talks about, oh, I'm so honest, my honesty. Oh my God, my honesty. Oh, you've heard this kind of talk from him yourself, I'm sure. And I know there are other people listening to this right now who are nodding like their heads
Yeah.
like, oh yeah. And he would talk about his, oh, my word, my word, my word, my word is so strong. And like you have my word, my word. And he would say it with such self-congratulation. And it's so lofty. And I was like, all right, fine. I got your word. Great. I'm going to write this how I want to do it. And I'm going to tolerate these, which I had no time to write this Murder Lake Washington series. So he publishes them somehow and sells them and to whoever. And they were terrible. If anyone's ever read them, I thought they were pretty awful. But you haven't. Yeah. Well, now he insisted. That's the weird thing is he insisted that these were effective, that they intimidated Courtney Love into not going through with the film. But he had no evidence for this at all. None. None. I just I couldn't understand it. And I just thought, okay, he's just, he's an eccentric guy, or he's just not that smart a guy, or like, I don't know what's going on here. And I've used the term before. I said I borrowed Hemingway's term, Hemingway's aphorism, I should say. Don't confuse movement with action. There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of movement when it comes from Tom and other people about the Kurt Cobain case, but there's no action, and nothing ever happens.
Yeah.
And you probably notice that yourself in your
Oh,
conversations
yeah.
with you have a long conversation with Tom, and actually nothing is accomplished. And it's
Yeah.
and so I did this, and I said, okay, fine. And then I almost walked away, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like we went through, some long enough periods where we didn't really talk. And
Now
as I
you felt a
recall,
little bad for him at this point, didn't you?
I did feel bad for him because I went to Lone Poke, California. Um, I don't know why, but we went up there after one of our meetings. We had several meetings in California, and some, I would, because at that time my wife and I were sort of, I met him up in Sacramento. I met him in lots of places, but at that point my wife and I were kind of had one foot in California and the San Francisco Bay Area and one foot on the East Coast. And but at any rate, I went to see him in Lone Pine, California. When I did, I realized, he was living in a rented room in a home owned by Indian
Oh, okay.
immigrants, and it was rough. And he brought me up to the rented room. You had to walk in, and Indian families make you take your shoes off when you enter a house. And so, all right, we'll take our shoes off. We'll walk up the stairs. We'll go see a rented room. And I walked in the rented room, and and it was tough. I mean, he had a bathroom and a microwave and a mini fridge, and I thought, boy, like, what am I doing in here? Why are you showing me this room? And I think he wanted me to feel sorry for him. I
Mm.
think in retrospect, it was a pity play. And I'm embarrassed to say it worked. I felt sorry for him. And so I indulged him a bit because I did feel so very sorry for him. I just thought, oh God, this guy has a rough life. Um, but I had one foot out the door. I was just like, this is not accomplishing anything. And I was getting tired of the subject. And then
And I want
um,
to reiterate, you've done a lot of really good research on this. Sometimes you go back and you're searching for stuff on on the internet and it's like, oh, Matthew Ricker, 1999. And, it's like some really, really, you've done a lot of great research on it too. So I can see where you've been doing this for so long and then just going, oh God, I need to move on to something else, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, just get to fatigue. The
Yeah.
fatigue that I felt in this case is extraordinary. Like a lot of people send me messages, in recent months and say, "Have you seen this podcast? You got mentioned in it." No, I haven't, and I'm not going to watch. And have you seen this? Someone said this on Facebook. Someone trashed you or someone praised you. And I just say, I just don't have the bandwidth for it.
Totally.
I'm just so fatigued by it.
Yeah.
And so, uh, thanks. You don't have to defend me, go, it's okay. I just doesn't matter. And one of the reasons I can be like that, of course, is because this world I'm nothing against the world, but like Nirvana fans and alternative music, it's actually not my world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't inhabit it on a daily basis. I actually inhabit a very different world. So it's almost like if someone went up to you and said, Michelle, do you know there are people out in Beijing, China, and they're trashing you every day in Tiananmen Square? Did you know about this? And you might say, well, I don't live in Beijing, China. I'm not going to Tiananmen Square. Let them have it.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally true. Yeah.
exactly. Well, it's a bit like that, and so people like will say all these things, and Tom will say, "Oh, I'm going to do this to you. I'm going to expose you," or something like that. I was like, "Well, all right." To me, it's Beijing, China. I mean, it doesn't. It's my daily life. It doesn't really bother me.
Yeah.
I inhabit a different world. So,
Totally.
at any rate, but my point is getting back to where I was. So I was 1 foot out the door, and but I had come up with some interesting information, and well, I started coming to this conclusion that Tom Grant never investigated the death of Kurt Cobain. And I just thought, okay, like really obvious things that Tom would always say, like, I'm an experienced investigator. I'm an experienced investigator. Talk about this. He also claimed that the Clinton Paula Jones's legal team came to him to investigate President Clinton. They hired him for that job.
Right.
I believed that for a long time. That had been written about. Love and Death had written that was in Max Wallace's book and Ian Halpern's book. I believed it. Tom talked about it, told stories about it, and and I waited. I have only myself to blame. I waited a long time before I fact checked that. And I assumed other people had done it before me, which was a form of laziness on my part. So I've only myself to blame. I later checked that out with Paula Jones' legal team and found out that he was just a security guard, really, just not a bad job, but
Yeah.
he was
Right.
just doing security for the Paula Jones legal team and for Paula Jones. And I spoke to Paula Jones himself, and they actually liked him. They spoke well of him, but they didn't hire him to be a private investigator to investigate the president.
Okay.
So that gave him a lot of credibility, that story that was really out there, but it was, something of an exaggeration. So at any rate, and I fell for it. I fell for a lot of things, so that I shouldn't have. And one of the things no one ever likes to admit is being played, getting conned or something like that.
Yeah.
No one likes to admit it. When it happens to people, usually people will say, we'll just kind of bury it and not want to talk about it, and we'll move on, or maybe even keep it a secret. Hey, it happened. I'm just going to own it. So at any rate, I had 1 foot out the door. But the things that Tom didn't look into, like for example, we know that there was the police reports claim that there was a stool wedged against the door. And I said to Tom, I said, well, in a fireman forced entry. And I said, well, Tom, I said, did you ask the fireman who gained entry if there was a stool there?
So what
Oh,
year was this,
this
Matthew?
is this is like 2012,
Okay.
2013, this is about 2012, I'd say. And so I found the fireman. It wasn't very difficult. Here I am, Boston, Massachusetts, and I call him up and I asked him what happened. And he said, you're the first person who's ever called me and asked me this question. So no one had ever asked. And I just said to myself, what's going on? Like, has anyone ever investigated the death of Kurt Cobain before? I had a lot of things like this. Um, and so I was coming up with interesting information, but no one had ever contacted the chief medical examiner and asked him about the autopsy. No one had ever done that. No one, Donald Ray, he was actually very helpful to me. But like, why didn't you make these calls, Tom? I thought you were up there investigating the case. And what were you doing up there then? And unfortunately, I attributed this to incompetence. I just thought he wasn't very good at it. And I knew he was very proud and very fragile if you questioned him. That was very difficult to do. Is very fragile if you question his
Very ego
feelings.
driven. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I said, okay, what's going on? And I just figured, okay, he has the right intentions, his heart's in the right place. Maybe his abilities don't match his intentions. And so I forgave him for a lot. And then I had one foot out the door. Statler came in, I forget the year he came in middle of the decade at some point, and was interested in doing a film. So I said, all right, we had to put a lot of money behind it. And I said, well, maybe I should do the book if there's a film going on that could correlate with it. And I
Yep.
said, that's a possibility. And then in 2014, a stroke of good luck, um, Kathleen O'Toole was made the police chief of Seattle. So, and I've told the story before, and I told Tom this. I said, oh boy, Kathleen O'Toole, I've met her, several times. I know she's friends with, um, my mother and my aunts and uncles, and they all, and a lot of my extended family. And I
O'Toole is Irish, right? So she's, yeah.
Yeah. And
Yep.
so she went to the same, I grew up in this family and the area of Boston, Massachusetts, it's people are usually a lot of people from Irish descent. A lot of people have dual citizenship as I do, and in Ireland in the United States. And she went to Boston colleges, I did, and everyone in my I shouldn't say everyone, but a great number of people in my extended family. I grew up in a very tight extended family,
Mhm.
the kind of extended family where everyone grew up within walking distance of each other's homes, that kind of family. And the vast majority of us went to Boston College to this day. So we had a lot of connections with Kathleen O'Toole. Um, and I said, boy, I can get to her very easily. This is a gift.
Yeah.
So he wasn't terribly impressed by that. And he's just kind of like shrugged. And I was like, really? And so then, so I started working on the book more. I said, okay, I can get this into her hands. And at least I don't know where it will go, but I can do that. And I know I can open that door. So he wasn't interested. And it was weird. And I just thought, why? What's going on? Is he, I think, I thought at the time he was worried that he was going to be overshadowed.
Yeah. Yep.
That's by me. That was my fear. And I thought, okay, he has a fragile ego. I can, maybe I can allay it somehow. That's what I assumed at the time. And I think there was truth to that, but that wasn't a sufficient explanation. And so then I um I found out a bit about Ben Statler. Now the thing about Soaked in Bleach, I'm not a big film guy. Like I'm not generally persuaded that much by film. I'm a book guy. And so in Soaked in Bleach, Tom said to me, I want to share some of the research with, your research with the film. You'll get credit for it, but you're not going to get paid. I'm going to get paid. And actually, I
Of
was okay with
course.
it. I didn't mind. He was going to get $50,000. He was thrilled with 50 grand. That was his first initial payment. I didn't mind. And I said, all right, good for you. He needed the money, so I thought, fine, and uh, I found out that Statler's father was a junior partner in the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Right.
Now, the majority owners of the Pittsburgh Steelers are the Rooney family. And I know that the Rooneys also know Kathleen O'Toole. They know Kathleen O'Toole because she, after being the police chief of the city of Boston, she became the head of the National Police Force for the Republic of Ireland. And Dan Rooney, the CEO of the Pittsburgh Steelers, was the ambassador to Ireland.
Okay.
And they also belong to the same organization. They're very involved in the same organization as a lot of my relatives are. I'm not sure if I'm a member or not, called the American Ireland Fund. The Rooneys actually helped found the American Ireland Fund at an event at the Reagan White House in the 80s. And that's
Interesting.
a sort of a social network for people who come of Irish ancestry. Very, very very significant enough in the Northeast United States. So, at any rate, I said, oh boy, Statler could get to Kathleen O'Toole easily, get her attention. He could just say, call his call his have his father call Dan Rooney and make an introduction, or maybe Tim Rooney or someone like that, and you could get the film into her hands. No, Tom didn't want that. And I just thought, okay, why does he want so much control? He never had anything nice to say about Statler at all. Statler's a hothead, he's immature, he'll screw it up. No, we can't do that. And I was just kind of like, what is going on? It took me way too long to figure this out. I can't believe I've always thought of myself as someone very good at pattern recognition, and I did not. It took me too long to recognize the patterns, and I'm still trying to figure them out. But other things that was happening in Soaked in Bleach too, like you saw that video that's out there now that I was on the set of Soaked in Bleach one day,
Yeah.
and I was not thrilled with what I saw when I was on the set. They had not done a lot of homework on the subject at all. I mean, I knew that when I was there, it was instantly obvious. And that some people might get upset about that, but hey, it's obvious. It's obvious enough. A lot of people have criticized the film, and I knew that when I was there. Tom had a lot of control. Um, like for example, I thought it was perfectly reasonable. Tom contacted me in a panic when they tried to get the original recordings of the tapes
Right.
that he made of Courtney Love. He was in a panic, and I just said, just give him the tapes. What's the big deal? They can only have the MP3s, and he was throwing a fit over. And he was really spiking the football over this. He eventually got Ben Statler to overrule Donnie Icar, who Tom really hated, and say, no, Tom doesn't have to submit the original tapes. Now, to be charitable to Ben Statler, I can see Tom being incredibly annoying and irritating and throwing a fit, and Statler just going, all right, all right, all right, all right, all right, fine, fine, fine. You don't have to show the original tapes. I mean, I could see conversation like, I'm sure there were probably many moments like that for Statler. I've had my own. So I don't say that necessarily to be critical, but
Yeah.
he overruled Icar there, and Tom got away with that one. Tom was really gloating over that. And then he wanted to call, Tom contacted me and said, Ben Statler wants to call Callie DeWitt, one of the
Right.
prime suspects. Tom helped make a prime suspect of who now seems to be less of a suspect. Um, Ben Statler wanted to give him a call and ask him whatever. Thought it was a good idea myself.
Yeah.
Tom hated it. Oh, he was just like, no way, he cannot call him. He has no experience. He cannot do that. And I just thought, what's the harm of calling him? All the guys, if it goes nowhere, it goes nowhere. Big deal. Let him call. Tom was, strong-armed him into not making that phone call. And I just thought, he's doing this kind of passive aggressive behavior. He's trying to like hamstring the film at the same time he's trying to make it happen. And what's going on? Uh,
That's, I think I'm at that point now where I'm just going, he did it with Hank, he did it with Richard Lee, he's done it with you. He tries to discredit everyone else who has ever worked on the case. So you go, well, this has to be ego because you can't imagine where else this could be coming from. And I know that I have heard from numerous people who have worked with Tom who have said that he has specifically put up roadblocks to make sure this case does not get solved. So, when
yeah,
you're talking about Kathleen O'Toole, these types of things where there would be, say, like Hollywood Reporter or like a really big opportunity for media, he would not allow people to be involved. And again, it sounds to me like, like ego run amok, just, wanting to be front and center, but there's something else to it. There's something else that is wrong with what has been happening over the past 30 years. And now we're seeing that with Joe, where there is no evidence, no reason to, I mean, obviously we'll go back to the Kathleen O'Toole, but there's no reason to disbelieve Joe. If there is, please let us all know. We're all waiting, we're all trying to figure out where Joe could be not telling the truth. but it's not happening. And so there is something besides just wanting to control this case that is going on. And I know we're going to get into that a little bit later, but um, what we had, I'll just interject this with Joe. So I believe what had happened was, he says he was hired by Courtney on the 3rd. We When he was first told, now, did he know about Joe prior to a year ago,
Not to my
Tom?
knowledge.
Okay.
Not to my
S
knowledge. Yeah.
Okay. So when he found out about Joe, I believe the first thing he thought was that Kurt was killed on the morning of the 2nd, which again, we don't know. We don't know whether it was the 2nd, 3rd, 4th. I'm leaning more because of the forensics towards the 4th, but I know there is also a case for why it could have happened earlier. But so Tom said, I can prove that Dylan was not at the Lake Washington house on April 2nd. Now, if he was not hired by Courtney, I want to understand how he could prove that Dylan was not there. We have many people who have said, "Oh no, Dylan said he was there. Dylan said he was there when Kurt died." Courtney has
Yeah.
said it in that one video. She said Dylan was with Kurt when he died. We know that Dylan was there. So where Tom is getting his information from, so he thinks he can prove Dylan wasn't there on the 2nd. And then when he finds out, well, Joe, when we said, well, Joe actually says it was the 4th, now all he does is call Joe a Nazi. He's can't prove Dylan wasn't there. And all he's doing is deflecting and insulting Joe. And everybody's seeing through it. Nobody, from our vantage point, he is just, I think his true colors are finally kind of showing to people who admired him for a long time. He's been very nasty to people just asking questions. I mean, it's just a really, really bad look. And I know we're going to kind of go through some other things that have happened, but I do want to be very clear for people who are watching, because I want them to come back and watch. I think we're going to do another episode. I want people to understand that this is not just someone, like, I truly thought it was just his ego. This
Yeah.
is not just someone who is trying to control the case. It doesn't make sense, and we now are seeing this, in full force with Joe, and he's, very deliberately going on the attack to say that Joe is not a witness, that Joe would never hold up in court, that no witness should be believed. Witnesses don't help solve crimes. I mean, things that someone in 4th grade would know. That was his last thing. He had a big fight with someone else about saying that witnesses are notoriously unreliable and they do not help to put people in jail. Like, have you
He
ever
said
heard
that.
anything? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Have you
yeah.
ever heard anything so ridiculous? I mean,
Yeah.
yes, witnesses can be unreliable. I'm not arguing that, but that doesn't mean that they're not used in court every single day.
Yeah.
And, as part of the puzzle, we talk about Joe. Well, he's not the full. We have a lot of other parts to this puzzle, don't we? I mean, you've done the research, that Joe is not the sole reason that this case needs to be reopened. He's just the newest.
Yeah. Right.
So,
And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. When I use the image of the vaudeville act,
yeah,
that when I first started using that term, I was claiming that the act, tossing banana peels in front of oneself and then tripping over them, I saw that as accidental. But in the old vaudeville show, it was deliberate.
of course.
And I started catching on to the fact that it was deliberate. And I didn't understand why, but it was like, this is designed to fail. And so when I finally wrote the book the way I wanted, largely the way I wanted to write it. And Tom didn't have too much contribution to it. There was only one part he wanted in there, and that was some sort of like personal attack on the Seattle police that I was going to remove eventually. And so I couldn't get, at the time, I worked like hell on it, first of all. And like, I mean, all day and night. We were trying to get it, I was trying to get it published before somewhat of an artificial deadline of an April 8th deadline of
Mm-hmm.
whatever year that was, 2016, 2017, I can't remember. And I checked in hotels, for example, and stayed up all night and wrote, left my family and did
Yeah.
that. And I worked like a dog on it, trying to get the wording right, trying to get the argument right. And I went to a lot of libraries to do a lot of research. I traveled, and I spent a lot of time on. I could have been doing more worthwhile things, and I spent a ton of time getting the words right. And So at the time, people were posting them on Amazon and trying to get reviews and then pitching them to a publisher. That was seemed to be the thing people. I don't know people doing that anymore, but at the time, that was a method for getting like a Kindle published.
Right.
And so I did that, and Tom had told me that Ben Statler was going to hire someone for us to design the book and make it a really nice Kindle. That turned to be false.
Okay.
But so I had to do it all myself. I didn't know how to do it. And but I figured it out. It was such a pain. And so immediately, all the reviews start going, and you're all, really good. Everyone really likes it.
It's a great
And
book. Yeah.
Tom's getting most of the credit. It's a co-written book. And I made the mistake. I can't believe it. I feel like such a fool. But I made the mistake, and it was a literary decision I made a long time ago to write the book from the perspective of the person investigating it.
Yeah. Okay.
Because that was a literary decision. I just thought readers like to see it through the eyes of the investigator, and that would be more effective. And so that was actually my decision to do that, not his. And feel so foolish saying that now, but it's true. It was mine. And everyone's writing reviews, and they're giving Tom all the credit. Great job, Tom. Oh, this is brilliant. This is excellent. Oh, wonderful. I was okay with that.
Yeah.
My name was on the book too. And I think I even wrote his introduction. I mean, I did it all of it. And it was a ton of work. Now, as all these reviews come forward, I'm trying to pitch the story to publishers. I'm getting nowhere. Now, here's where the passive aggressive comes in. I started really getting angry. Now, remember, I had the word. You have my word. This is all. You can do whatever you want. You have my word. I had gone through the Murder at Lake Washington mindless series. I had helped out with Soaked in Bleach. I got no credit for my researching Soaked in Bleach. Who found out that Norm Stamper was critical of the lead detective in the case? Who came up with that? That was me. That wasn't Tom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the biggest thing that's happened to the case. And yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the John Fisk, the fireman who opened the doors to the greenhouse. I was the one who tracked that guy down. He's interviewed on the case. Very compelling in the film, but that was actually my research, not Tom's investigation. I got no credit. I didn't mind not getting paid. I did want credit because I was promised that. I didn't get it. Of course. And then there were a few other things in the film that I and I was happy to contribute to the film. I did want credit for doing it, which I didn't get. And so, but I went along with that, and I didn't complain. I had my word, which I foolishly believed. I had this book, and I could do whatever I wanted with it. So I couldn't. But some people were interviewing me. I was interviewing the book. I was at that time, I'm embarrassed to say, still supporting the theory that Tom was, a man of integrity and ability who investigating the death for all the right reasons of Kurt Cobain. But the passive aggressive resistance came strong. And he was supposed to give me photographs. Tom does not like the question of photographs. You only took one photograph the whole time you were looking for Kurt Cobain, just one. Like, where are the others? He did not like this question. He didn't send me any photographs. I need photographs. And after the book comes out, I also send an email to Kathleen O'Toole, which he has, and I forwarded to him, and then Kathleen O'Toole say, "Oh yeah, you have a book? Okay, yeah, we'll take a look at it. Great, I'll forward it on to the assistant police chief, and she says, very nice to hear from you, something to that effect. I still have the email somewhere, and I said, great, forwarded her the Amazon copy, and then I followed up with a couple of phone calls, and I said, I was doing a couple of podcasts, and Tom wasn't giving me anything. For example, one of the things I wanted were the so-called the credit card receipts and the hotel phone records. I never saw them. The phone records of the Peninsula Hotel, I have never seen them. I don't know anyone who has independently verified them, and I don't know if they actually exist. They may exist, but I don't know.
Interesting.
And I can't go to the Seattle police. I mean, this is the stuff we got in arguments over. I can't go to the Seattle police and say this evidence exists if I haven't seen it. I'm going to look like a fool. And one of the things I said to Tom was, if I reach out to the Seattle police chief and I open this door and I use I'm one of those people, I'm very reluctant to use my kind of family name or credentials kind of thing.
Yep.
I do that. I don't like doing that. That's a card I don't like to play.
Yep.
Of all people to play it for, I play it for Tom. So, so I opened this door and I said, I had a couple of phone conversations with the Seattle police and I said, but I need to see the evidence. If I haven't seen the evidence, I can't claim it exists.
Of
I'm
course.
not going to show it to anyone else, but I need to see it. I need to say that it exists. He wouldn't show it to me. He wouldn't provide me with any photographs, wouldn't provide me with any, this passive aggressive hamstringing started really kicking in. I was just furious. So I had, and then he accused me of trying to steal the money for the book. Now, the book, self-published books are very slow to pay out. And I actually kept unpublishing it because I kept finding typos and
Oh,
then like
okay. Yeah.
republishing it again. And so it wasn't making any money. And but I didn't care. And I couldn't get a publisher interested despite the reviews. There was kind of the film hadn't done well. The market was glutted with Kurt Cobain stuff. And I did one interview and with a guy named Ron Chapesiak in a show called Crime Beat. And he said, have you ever heard of Wild Blue Press? And I said, no. And he said, they're a small skeleton crew publishing company. They do mostly Kindles. You should give them or drop them a line. And I said, all right, I will. Didn't hear back from them. He contacts me and he says, what did Wild Blue Press say? And I said, nothing. And he contacts them for me. And
Nice.
all of a sudden I get an offer by email to publish the book. Probably what I actually don't know. I never actually spoke to them on the phone. I posted it online. At this point, Tom and I are no longer speaking. I expected very naively to receive an apology and a thank you from Tom Grant. I did. That's what I thought again. Remember, I had his word. I could do whatever I wanted with this book.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
This was my baby, and it was. And now the Wild Blue Press, I don't know. I mean, they don't have an office, they don't have a phone number. It was not a great deal. I think the money, once you start making money, it was like a year away or 6 months. It was a while and before you start making money from it. I was okay with all of that. But if you have a publisher, it doesn't matter who it is, the book has, a little bit of legitimacy.
Yeah,
You can't just
for sure.
self-publish it, right?
Yep.
It's not gonna work.
Yeah.
If I say it's published by someone, anyone, I can go to the Seattle Police and say, here, this book is the book. I have it on the case. It's published. Here's the evidence. Take a look at it. Now, they were willing to take a look at it. High levels of the Seattle Police Department were willing to take a look at it. What they would do with it, well, I don't know. They can't promise anything.
Of course.
And how could they? So, but the door was open a little bit, and no one had ever done that before. So, who cares about the money? I mean, there was plenty of time to do an accounting for the money to figure it out.
Yep.
Not only that, so Tom, instead of thanking me and apologizing, contacts Wild Blue Press, threatens to sue them, then demands an entirely different deal. He says, no, I need my own contract, and I need this and I need that. And then he says, okay, fine. I was furious. I was so ready to walk away, but I said, fine. I was embarrassed that I had contacted Kathleen O'Toole and told my family about it. That I
Yeah.
felt that was actually
Yeah.
my family why I kept going with it, because I told them all. And so I said, okay, fine, we'll go along with this. And then he sends me a $1,500 PayPal request. In the meantime, he'd had a draft copy of the book that he had been selling on his own through his website. I don't know how much he made off that. And I told him, I don't even want any of it. Fine, keep it all. I don't care. But I just want this to go forward. You know what I mean? I don't care about the money. Whatever you made off it, fine.
Yeah.
And he thought I was stealing all this money from the self-published Amazon. And I wasn't. We just weren't speaking.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not going to steal any money from the Wild Blue Press. No money had come yet. But I don't even think that was it. See, I don't think it was the money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He didn't want
You didn't want it to go forward.
He didn't want it to go forward. So something really super strange is going on here. I even invited one of his, I said, he has a daughter, the daughter passed away, that he had great confidence in, that I met. And I said, why don't you bring her into the conversation and she can see everything. I gave Tom my passwords to Amazon and everything else. I said, you can see everything. You can look in. look at it. I'm not like making out like a bandit here.
Yeah.
I don't know what Tom was doing. He showed me, whatever he was selling. I never saw any numbers on his end. He would never do that. But I didn't care. Keep all the money. That's fine. So, and he was getting a lot of web traffic in the wake of Soaked and Bleach in those days. So I'm sure he sold plenty of copies, and who cares? I don't really care. But I wanted it to go forward. In other words, I want to do cheap something. I didn't really care about the money.
Totally.
And you don't put all that, you don't make money off books. It's
Yeah.
actually really difficult to do.
Yeah.
Like
Unless
it's
the
an
Harry Potter.
achievement, but it's
Yeah.
but it's not like a financial achievement. I mean, that's in the movies, but in real life, it's impossible to make money off a book and very, very, very difficult. Had we gotten the Seattle police to act on something, the Seattle police chief to do something, that might have been money.
Yeah.
But short of that, it wouldn't have been anything, really. Not at all.
Yeah.
Compared to the amount of effort and money I spent on it and time and effort, it's a loser writing a book. So, but he's, convinced, oh, you're going to try to steal all this money. That wasn't it. He doesn't want to win. He didn't want that to go forward. Now that's the question. Why? Because he hasn't done this just to me. He does this to everyone. Kurt Frazier, who did the Cobain evidence blog, other people. But Ben Statler,
Yeah.
he hamstrings the case while on the surface pretending to advocate for it. Why is the big question?
And I'm going to stop you right there, Matthew, because that's exactly the question that I want to figure out. And I have some evidence that I have as well, and I know you have a lot. So sorry. So what I would like to do is let's put this up, and then let's talk more about the evidence next week, because I want people to get an idea of who you are, of why we're doing this. And I'm going to bring in some questions next week as well. And then we can let people know why we have this feeling that it's not just an ego, that there's something else going on. Does that work for you?
That works for me, sure.
Perfect. Okay, so that's great. So once I'm done this, I will go ahead and we'll set up a meeting to do the next one. And then we'll, let's let people digest this, because I know people have been like you and I, they've been duped.
Right.
And this is not just, this has been happening to a lot of people. So but I think people are catching on, and I think that, this is going to be the year that between all of us, between everything going on, I think we're finally going to get some movement on this case, and we see that unraveling right now in more actions that I'd love to talk about as well. I know you don't keep up with a lot of that stuff too, so I'll bring some of that to the table next week.
Great.
Perfect. Okay, Matt, it was really nice talking to you and meeting you sort of face to face-ish. And yeah, we'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Good
talk
night.
to you soon. Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.